This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to My Business Stars, a podcast series featuring conversations with disabled business owners telling their business stories. Hosted by the Disability Business Network. Kia ora. I'm that blind woman, Julie Woods, from the Disability Business Network and host of My Business Stars. On today's episode, we have Mark Inglis from Mark Inglis Unlimited, winemaker, mountaineer, Paralympian, ambassador, officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit. So many prizes and tags and badges. Mark, welcome to My Business Stars and thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thanks, Julie. A real privilege to be here. Thank you.
I forgot to add, first double amputee to climb Mount Everest.
Yeah, that was a bit of a biggie. There's only been two of us so far in the almost 20 years now since I first climbed it, and one other climbed it in 2018, and then it's certainly not a walk in the park.
No, I can imagine. I'm thinking about this podcast and featuring conversations with disabled business owners. At what stage did business feature in your story?
It sort of came about because it sort of had to, really. I was senior winemaker at Montana Wines in Marlborough, and I just got back into really serious climbing and realised that you couldn't do both. You couldn't go and climb in the Himalaya because it's at the same time as vintage. We'd been coming to Hamner Springs a lot in our holidays, and every time you drive out of Hamner, you think, oh, what could I do to live here? And it's only a small community of 1,000 people, but it has a lot of visitors. And it was really the combination of those two things that really forced me into finding something else to do. And the something else to do is something that I have always done a lot of, and that's talk. And so that was back in September of 2002, and we moved to Hamner, and I started out feeding the family by doing the whole motivational speaking thing around the world.
And what did you start talking about?
The same thing that everyone always asks about, and that was back in those days, this is early 2000s, was just the experience of Mount Cook, because everyone sort of remembered that time in November of 1982, plus the Paralympics, of course, because that was fresh in everyone's mind, my silver medal there. And so the combination of those two things. But for me, that's just a vehicle to be able to get in front of people and then start to explain a whole bunch of the other things around the things that I love. Can
you remember your first talking engagement?
Yeah, I can actually. It was
sorry about that.
Actually, it was before I left Montana, and I was senior winemaker in Marlborough, and it was actually to the senior executives of Lion Nathan in Hamilton. It was in a conference in Hamilton, and at that time, Lion Nathan were attempting to purchase Montana Wines, and I was sitting with the CEO of Lion Nathan that night at the talk, and I'd given my talk and everything, and he was likely to be the next owner of Montana. And then I woke up the next morning and see that they'd sold all the shares that they had and walked away from it. And it was just like, oh, I wish I'd known that last night. And so, you always remember your first for a whole bunch of different reasons. Yep.
Yeah. And I guess you've spoken all over.
Yep. Yeah. It's in the decade before COVID, nearly all of my work was in India, because I'd been speaking in New Zealand for a decade from 2002, and then I sort of ran out of people to speak to in New Zealand. I've spoken to everyone in New Zealand probably 4 or 5 times, but there's almost 1.5 billion people in India, and a lot of them speak English. So there's plenty more speaking to go there. And plus some really interesting places. So quite a lot in Australia these days, in Melbourne and around. I do a lot of business consulting there. Singapore, of course, which is really popular. But I've done some pretty unusual ones. Iran and Tehran, that was amazing. Iraq, at Erbil. So it takes you pretty much everywhere.
And in those circumstances, do you have a translator beside you?
In India, you don't need one because everyone does business
Yeah.
in English. You can't speak Kiwi, though, unfortunately. You do have to learn to speak English. And so that was always a bit of a challenge. Um, in other places, there, yes, the great ones have instantaneous online, but it still makes a big difference to how you present, and how you use humor and all of those other things, if you're having to rely on a translation. So it takes a lot of thought and a lot of effort. The only thing harder than doing that is doing Zoom presentations. I despise Zoom presentations. It's like just speaking to camera, because you really need the feedback from the audience, and that's the critical thing.
There's one thing worse than you doing a Zoom presentation, and that's me doing a Zoom presentation because there's no audio feedback or any visual feedback as well. It's quite challenging.
Yeah, it is for all of us. Yeah, and it's a totally different set of skills, really. It's the set of skills about speaking to a camera rather than speaking to an audience, and that's the real challenge. Yep.
And we've heard actors speak about that forever, haven't we, about TV versus theatre and the response that they get from the audience. So I guess that's something similar. But grateful for what technology can do in terms of opening audiences as well. Tell us about
Yes,
your...
it is, and it's and since COVID's been and gone, the New Zealand market's sort of like refreshed. So I'm doing a lot in New Zealand at the moment, and and it's for a whole bunch of different things. I do a lot of work around resilience, around attitude to change. But interestingly, there's a lot of companies that use me to give talks around health and safety. I'm pretty sure it's they point at me and go, "Don't do what Ingles did," and hopefully that works. So yeah.
Tell me about your winemaking. Is that a part of your business now?
No, that's well and truly gone.
Right.
So I was at Montana from 92 to 2002, and then I did some wine consulting for about 5 years after that. But it's something that you really need to be in boots and all, and you're speaking to a 66-year-old attention deficit male here, so I've got lots of other things that I need to do. And to be fair, I've probably had more than my fair share of wine, so it's something that I keep to one side now.
What's the best thing about having a business?
Freedom of choice, and it's the worst thing as well. It's as always the best and the worst are quite often the same thing. For me, it's the ability to make decisions and make choices that I'm not being forced into by other people. And if I disagree with a choice that I've made, then I just argue with myself or with Anne, my wife. Yep.
Or you try it and it doesn't work, and then you learn from that.
Oh yeah, there's no shortage of that. That's for sure.
What's the best thing you've done in your business?
Um, Gee, that's really hard. It is really just coming back and focusing on why you do the speaking, about sharing the messages that you have learnt, sharing the messages in life, sharing the messages in business, and helping open the window that people are looking out into their world, just helping open that window a bit wider. That's the thing I love.
Changing their worldview.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And what about the challenges of business?
Challenges of business are the things that I'm terrible at, and that's selling. I'm terrible with just been negotiating with a client just right at the moment over the last few days on the price of something, and I'm a shocker. I'm the softest touch known to man. And I really probably need someone to do that. The hardest thing in business is I've never really had someone that works sort of with me. and that's probably been a bit of a downfall, really.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing that. What advantage then do you think being ADHD and a double amputee gives you in business?
Oh, it's the ability to embrace change. I love change, and I love doing really hard stuff. That's I'm just back from 3 weeks in Nepal, leading a group of 10 people, and I'm smiling the whole way. It doesn't matter how hard it is. Well, actually, not the whole way. But even when I'm really not enjoying it, that's actually when I'm enjoying it. And so it's that combination of all of those things. It's from growing up as a mountaineer. Sort of once a mountaineer, always a mountaineer. Mountaineers do hard stuff, and if you can take that into the rest of your life, then it makes other things like being a double amputee easier, like being your classic, 66-year-old attention deficit male easier, because you just embrace the hard stuff.
Where does that come from, being able to do that? Because it might be innate in you, but, for a lot of people, that's, for you just to be able to say that.
That's right. And a lot of it comes from, I started climbing when I was only like 12 years old, but because I sucked at rugby. And, in New Zealand, if you couldn't play rugby when I was growing up, then, it was like, what else are you going to do? And I was just privileged to have a mentor who was a mountaineer. And mountaineering just is all encompassing. It's not just it's not a sport. I was able to turn it into a job, but it's your culture really, and it's that culture of doing hard stuff. You get the greatest sense of achievement because it's achievement that becomes addictive. Doesn't matter what you're doing, and whether it's doing deals in business or in sport or whatever. If you set some really hard goals, things that really scare you, and you achieve them, then you just wake up to the fact that you can actually do it harder next time. You can do it better, and that's what mountaineering is. And so, if you can take that attitude along, and that's the attitude that I see is missing more and more often. It's the that some people call it resilience. Other people, it's just the willingness to do something really hard because you know that the benefits from it are just a multiplying factor of it. It's fantastic.
I'm thinking of you speaking to 12-year-olds. Is that your message, to get out of your comfort zone and to try stuff that you think's hard or might be hard?
I'll tell you what, talk that I'll do to year seven and eights isn't much different apart from the swearing that I would do for a group of corporate executives because they're facing the same things, but the difference is that they're at the start of the journey. And so, if I can, generally do about a school a month or something like that, as part of the charity that I do. And it's just to be able to be put in front of those young minds and share with them the lessons that I've learned, but most importantly, help open that window that they're looking out onto the world, just open that a bit wider, because in many cases that's a pretty narrow window they look out. And so the more experiences that they can bank in their life experience, then the more able they'll be as they get older.
Yeah, because I think voluntarily getting out of your comfort zone is one of the hardest things. And when you become disabled or acquire an impairment, it's certainly something that you have to do. And you're able to draw on that mountaineering experience, which is pretty cool.
It's yeah, it really is transformational and dealing with something like a disability. It's about bringing, as I tell people, it's not what you think in life, it's how you think. And learning how to think means that it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. There's always a mechanism, a template in which to approach it, and that's how to think. And so that's why, for many, things like that, that terrible time of COVID, that was seen by many as and for many that actually got COVID and were very ill or lost family, it was a real tragedy. But it was also it's how you approach it, and if you just get shut down by these things, then you never get growth. It's about learning from it, finding ways through it. It's always easier to say than do, though.
Having a business means that you are with other people and have relationships with other people. Is there anyone that you would like to thank for helping you in your business?
Golly, probably so many. First and foremost, and my wife, who's been behind me the whole way. I've come up with some pretty crazy schemes, and so her and the kids, Amanda, Jerry, and Lucy, they've always backed me in the things that I've done, and it's that backing, that acknowledgement that you are going to give it your absolute best, and if it doesn't work out, you'll find a way around it. That's the thing that's been by far the most valuable. And there've been a whole range. I'm lucky in that I speak to a lot of business groups. I speak to a lot of businesses and a lot of communities, and so I get to meet some pretty special people, really. And from every one of those pretty special people, you can always take a little bit away. I'm working at the moment with Mike and Andrea Boyle from Australia. They have a business called Strategy Shift, and Mike and I we basically tag team in businesses working with young leaders, and it's the pleasure of doing that. Because the biggest thing I miss from winemaking is actually the interaction of people. And so when you're a speaker just by yourself, you'll have agencies that you deal with. Sometimes you just deal direct, but it can be a bit lonely. It can be a bit isolating. So the more that you can do that, the more people you can interact with and learn from, the better.
We know about your mountaineering dream. Well, you may have more, but what about your business dream? Do you have anything that you'd like to achieve?
Oh, I have no shortage of goals, and they keep on. I keep on looking back and going, "Where did that go? Where did that go?" And so quite often they don't. They aren't there. It's hopefully the mortgage will be paid off in the next week or two. And that's been a long-term dream.
Oh, yay.
So it's that's a real milestone for Anne and I. But it's more than that. It's to create really an enduring template for others. That's, I guess, my business dream. It's not about your business success in yourself. It's around about building a template that others can use. Or, it's pretty hard to have a succession plan when your business is based on you telling your story. And so if you can't make that work, then what else are you going to do? And that's about, I guess, creating that template and sharing it with others.
And what would you say to disabled business owners who are just starting out and getting going? What would you say to them?
Oh, you've probably got a head start, because if you're dealing with a disability, you've already been dealing with hard stuff. So take that as a leg up, really. A person with a disability in business, I always see as being, golly, they've got a real advantage on anyone else. And so if you can make the most of that advantage, that's even better. And so just always remember that, if you're managing a disability, then gee, managing a business, put the same amount of focus and care into that, and you'll do fantastic.
That's a wonderful sentiment. In terms of your goals, what are they, mountaineering or otherwise?
No more big mountains. I've lost enough bits on mountains now. I'm running out of bits to lose, really. And as we have a saying in mountaineering, as you get older, you just get lower and slower. And so for me, it's just living and spending time in the mountains. That's the thing that I absolutely love. I still look up at the big mountains, and there's always a wish involved. But as all mountaineers know, wishing doesn't get you there. It's you have to earn your way there. And for the rest of it, outside of that, it really is. It's about changing the way that people think about disability. It's that I feel quite strongly about removing that whole concept of being disabled, because you're not disabled, you're a person living with a disability. And that for me is it may be simplistic because I'm pretty cut and dried. I'm just an amputee of legs and fingers. But for a lot of people, I know life's a lot more complex. But if you can distill it down to, it's still the soul of the person inside, and the vehicle that they're traveling in may have a few dents and scrapes or be missing a wheel or two, but that's secondary. And it's too easy for people to be condescending to someone who has a disability, and it's about really showing strength.
Thank you. Well, we've reached the end of our time. It's just been wonderful to have this conversation with you, Mark, and for you giving us your time. If people want to get hold of you, where can they go, or what do they do?
They can go to markinglesunlimited.co.nz or mark@markingles.co.nz. You can always find me online. It's pretty easy, because if people can't find me online, I don't get talks. So it's that double-edged sword, is that you need to live your life online.
Well, you do that, and you were very responsive when I sent an email. So thank you for saying why not to being on my Business Stars. It's been a privilege to talk with you today. You've been listening to that blind woman, Julie Woods, host of My Business Stars, and Mark Inglis from Mark Inglis Unlimited. Thank you, Mark. We'll let you go.
Thank you.
The Disability Business Network is the only business network in Aotearoa, New Zealand, dedicated to business owners who live with an impairment. If you are disabled, own your own business, and would love to mix with people who look like you, then join us today at the Disability Business Network. You can find us at disabilitybusinessnetwork.org, or you can contact that blind woman, Julie Woods, on 021 913 513, or email julie@thatblindwoman.co.nz. At the Disability Business Network, we believe in disabled people being successful in their own businesses and becoming business stars.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.